Greetings and welcome to another edition of Radical Grace Radio.
I'm Pastor Gary Held.
My name is Matthew Pancake, and this is episode 829. We're that close to 830. We've had 829 opportunities to help people understand the gospel. You know, that's the thing. It's like, as life-changing as it was, and it was actually, to find out how rightly dividing law and gospel. And back at the beginning, I was just so fascinated by this that I was looking in the scriptures to see if I could see the apostles, for instance, doing that. Mm-hmm. And I caught them doing it, and that was something that solidified it for me. But what gets me is that there are people out there that not only do they not understand it, but they don't think it's really all that important. They don't go right on with, they're preaching their law as though it's, good news. Jesus has given you the opportunity to be a good person. I heard that on the radio. You've seen me, looking like I'm about to tear my hair out, right?
Remember that. I'm going to ask you about that to remember that on the backside. But that idea that, here's the good news for you. Jesus is going to help you to become a good person. Okay, so let's just...
No. He's given you the opportunity to be a good person.
The opportunity. So,
right.
All right, so let's just put that on a burner for a second. So I contend that St. Paul ran into folks who were doing the same thing in his day. They were trying to be helpful. They probably really were sincere. They probably thought that they had some kind of understanding or insight into Jesus and his mission. But if it comes down to the same thing you're talking about, where you're giving people laws to keep instead of good news to believe, Paul's assessment was like this. He says, they want to be teachers of the law, but they don't know what they're talking about. I can't remember right off the top of my head where that passage is, chapter and verse, or even book. But I know that I've read that, and we've said that on the air many times, that here's preachers who are, in many cases, they are trying to undermine the work that Paul's doing because they think that, what God wants us to do is get busy doing the laws. And so, that's what they aim for. And
for people who want to know, 1 Timothy 1:7. Timothy 1:7. That's it. I just looked it up because I couldn't remember either, and I actually felt bad about that.
Yeah. So, but the key thing is they don't know what they're talking about. It's not that they don't know the law; it's that they don't understand that that's not the gospel. That's not the good news that gives hope to dying people. Right. So they're missing it. Not that they're terrible people. It's just that they don't understand what they think they do understand, more or less.
Right. So that's what we do on this program. We try and well, not only that, but like to look at how a division of law and gospel, a right division of law and gospel, would change your life, and what that would look like if it were somehow affecting your life on a daily basis. And that's what I've always wished it would happen when we're doing the Christian News Roll. I think we'll be able to do that today, although we have been anyway. So that's the thing we're going to do next is this thing called the Christian News Roll. Cue up the music and let's go. The TV series The Chosen, which depicts the life of Jesus Christ, faced a significant hurdle when the labor strike, led by the Screen Actors Guild and the Writers Guild of America, threatened to stop production for season 4. They're on 4 now. However, the creators were granted the very first inside this, you can get a waiver inside this particular strike. They were granted a waiver and allowing them to continue filming just in time. They only had 2 weeks left on this season. They assured fans that they had met all of the SAG's requests and that donations independently funded season 4. Additionally, the waiver allowed the main cast, nearly all members of the Actors Union, to continue filming and move the production forward. Despite the strike's challenges, The Chosen remains captivating and popular. The show premiered on the CW network and attracted 520,000 users, or viewers rather, surpassing other popular shows like Riverdale and Nancy Drew. The series' success is attributed to its unique portrayal of Bible events and devoted fan base. Production on the fourth season of Chosen began in April, and still there was uncertainty due to the possible labor strike. Thankfully, the team now has the waiver and can continue telling their compelling and faith and sport inspired story. I have to talk this way because I'm growing to like it more over time, and and it's going to be enjoyed by more viewers worldwide. So to see how this deal that they made a few weeks ago, I can't remember the name of the company, to see how that went.
Yeah.
I just looked on Amazon. I looked up the show because I know you can find the show on Amazon
Yeah.
to stream on Amazon. But there are no fewer than 5, and it may have been 6 different streaming services that you could get it on now.
So, yeah.
Netflix has got it.
Yes, I knew that. I knew Netflix did.
Peacock, the Peacock network's got it.
Didn't know that. So
yeah, and that's part of this new distribution thing that's going on. So where they had, what was it? I can't remember what the numbers were. Was gargantuan, but now everybody's going to be able to see it on whatever streaming service they already have. That's really good. There's more to talk about this when we finish.
They're certainly riding the wave, aren't they?
Yeah.
So, yep. Well, the number 4 story is that you've heard of Lifeway, right? Lifeway. Everybody's heard of. Everybody in the Christian circles has heard of Lifeway, and so that online group, Lifeway Christian Resources, that's a division of it, has decided to shut down its music website, which had offered a variety of resources for worship services, such as sheet music, choral arrangements, and various demos. And the organization notified its members about the decision, stating that they plan to focus their resources on other areas where they can better serve churches faithfully. Before the site goes offline, all church leaders have until September 30 to download all the content from their LifewayWorship.com accounts. So if you have a Lifeway Worship, better take care of that. Yep. Lifeway Christian Resources is following a recent trend among faith-based organizations by downsizing its operations. In 2019, they closed 172 physical bookstores and discontinued their music website and decided they were just going to focus on supplies for things like the Lord's Supper, the hymnals, church supplies, digital graphics, and various seasonal products. Mm-hmm. More broadly, the Christian music publishing industry has been affected, with Nashville-based Brentwood Benson Music closing in 2021 due to challenges from the COVID-19 pandemic. Brentwood reportedly owned over 60,000 copyrights and had signed artists like Michael W. Smith, Gary Chapman, Yolanda Adams, and DC Talk, and I think the list goes on. So,
just for clarification, the music website that they shut down in 2019 was Literal Music. They were selling music tracks. I forgot to put that in there. The number 3 story, in a recent assessment of this is sad. Excuse me, I'm sorry. The recent National Assessment of Educational Progress has raised concerns about the decreasing number of students who read for leisure. The assessment was carried out during a 2022-2023 academic year and involved students who were 13 years old. Remember, there was a TV show that was along those lines a while back? Are you smarter than, I think it was, a 5th grader? The results showed that the average reading scores for these students had decreased by 4 points compared to the previous assessment, 2019-2020. The scores for mathematics also declined 9 points during the same period. Okay, so let's get a little more sad, okay? The report reveals that only 14% of students read for enjoyment daily. This is, or almost daily. This is a decline of 3% from 2020 and a significant drop of 13% since 2012. These figures are the lowest percentage of students who engage in daily leisure reading in the history of the assessments. In 1984, 35% of students reported reading for fun, which highlights the decreased scale. Moreover, the assessment has uncovered disparities in academic performance. Both male and female students have experienced lower reading scores, and the gender gap in mathematics scores has widened since 2020. Female students have witnessed an 11-point decline, while male students have seen a 7-point drop. Additionally, the gap in academic achievement between white and black students has increased from 35 points in 2020 to 42 in 2023. And what I didn't put in there, and I wasn't sure, I just wanted to mention it, but I do, is that a lot of this appears to be on account of COVID and the lockdowns and everything that happened. Although the decline itself has been progressing since the 80s.
So, yeah, well, that's true. I mean, so if you can trace it back way further than COVID, you can't put all the blame at its feet. We'll come back and talk about it. The number 2 story is that 4 leaders of the Genesis 2 Church of Health and Healing. Now, that's what they're really called. The Genesis 2 Church of Health and Healing.
Mm-hmm.
An online.
I gave you this one for a reason.
I know. An online organization.
This is one of those for you to have fun with.
Known for its controversial practices are currently on trial. So these 4 leaders are facing trial. The group is accused of promoting a dangerous bleach solution in order to cure COVID-19. The indicted individuals include Mark Grennan, he's age 62, and his 3 adult sons. You know, there's Jonathan, 34, Jordan Grennan, 26, and Joseph Grennan, who's 32. And they've been charged with conspiracy to defraud the United States and distribute misbranded drugs. You say, what's a misbranded drug? Okay, glad you asked. The group marketed chlorine dioxide as, quote, the miracle mineral solution, or MMS for those in the know, right? The miracle mineral solution. And at one point in their marketing, they called it, get this, a sacrament.
They did.
We're just trying to
I found the website. Yeah.
We're just offering people the sacrament. Yeah. Of chlorine dioxide. Anyway, the church also allegedly made false claims that it could cure COVID-19 and treat malaria and cancer and even autism. The Food and Drug Administration has warned against ingesting this solution that's commonly used in industrial settings, and it can be fatal if consumed. Okay, so in April 2020, the Grennans were all ordered by a South Florida judge to stop selling MMS as a miracle cure. It appears, however, the family disregarded this court order, leading to criminal charges being filed against them in July of the same year.
And those were state charges.
Yeah, so the Grennans represent themselves in court, and at the start of the trial on July 17th, they did not make an opening statement. According to prosecutors, the defendants are con men and snake oil salesmen, and they are misleading the public about the supposed benefits of MMS. So,
I should put an echo on MMS.
MMS, yeah.
It turns out, I just was doing some more reading, that part of the reason why they didn't give an opening statement is because they have an assistant, because the judge apparently appointed someone who's counsel to be there as like an advisor. And apparently they advised them that any opening statement they make could potentially be used against them in that very courtroom. So they did not make an opening statement.
Man. Well, I can see
all this over a sacrament. The sacrament of bleach. It's just awful. Okay, speaking of more court proceedings, the number 1 story, lawyers for Christian baker Jack Phillips are urging the Colorado Supreme Court, not a surprise, to dismiss a case against him, citing the recent affirmation by the U.S. Supreme Court for artists' First Amendment rights to decline work conflicting with their religious beliefs. Phillips has been embroiled in legal battles for years, and after he refused to bake a cake for a same-sex wedding, resulting in a lawsuit, under Colorado's anti-discrimination law covering sexual orientation. And while he previously won a narrow victory before the Supreme Court, the case was sent back to lower courts for further evaluation. More recently, Phillips faced another lawsuit for declining to create a gender transition cake. Still, his attorneys were actually involved in this. A significant win in another case before the Supreme Court where they represented a Christian web designer who refused to service for same-sex marriages. The High Court ruled 6-3 in favor of the web designer, Lori Smith, emphasizing that the government cannot compel individuals to create messages that contradict their beliefs. Legal experts must decide if professionals like bakers and florists are expressive work and deserve the same protections as Ms. Smith. And that is this week's Christian News Roll. Yeah, you see, that's the thing that they had going on with this, and I wasn't even aware that they were actually the same set of lawyers. They had been over in Washington before the Supreme Court, and they won their case there. And they went back and they said, look, part of what they wanted him to do was they wanted him to write stuff on the cake. And that's what they're going for in there right now. And I think they might wind up showing that, you can't do that. You can't make a bake. Now, will they be able to say, well, we just want one that's a rainbow cake? The thing is I could imagine even a Christian baker saying, sure, I can make a rainbow cake. It's like, as long as there's nothing on it, but the minute that they start making them say things on the cake or put stuff on cards or write it on the box that the cake is in, I think they're going to have trouble with that. And this is actually what I was hoping for, because, my thoughts on this is that anyone that could be considered an artist should be able to refuse whatever they want for any reason and no reason at all. Because, you're a finite resource. There's that. And, if it turns out that like someone comes to me and says, I'd like you to draw a big thing, and it's like a gay thing. It's like, and I got plenty of work already. And if I just happen to say, and besides which I don't do that anyway, boom, they're going to try and get me prosecuted under some state law. It's like, no, I could just tell you that I just don't have time to do it. But the state's not going to put up with that. Or at least now they can, I can make a claim that, look, I don't want to be mixed up in talking about that stuff. I don't want it. So, I mean, this is what I was hoping for, is that they would be able to, understand that, I mean, governments and people have misused artists for centuries. Popes have misused artists. That's what happened to Michelangelo. The Pope told him, yeah, you're going to do, Michelangelo is a sculptor, but you're going to paint the Sistine Chapel. You're going to do it. Why? Because I'm the Pope. You're going to do it.
Go make him an offer he can't refuse.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you would mention that. There's a whole long story about that. Just go look up who those popes really were. You'll find out some interesting things about them. So what did we say here just a second ago? Oh, you wanted to come back to the miracle mineral solution. Now, that actually has a long history. They actually stole that. They actually stole that name, miracle mineral solution, from something that was going around a lot longer before. And the bakers, Jim Baker and his new show, they were even mixed up in that.
Okay.
Before COVID came along. It was like, great, it's a sacrament. Here's the thing is, from this, we've actually got to consider this. They don't do tithing at that church. You don't even have to go to that church. You just pay a membership to be a member of it. And then there's the other things you might pay for as well. Of course, you'd have to pay for the miracle mineral solution.
Of course.
And
that goes without saying.
Yeah, you'd have to pay for, but you'd have to pay for the membership as well. So they literally thought that they could hide behind religion with this and get away with it. And it's like, no, I mean, can we come up with our own? We got to have like a miracle something or other.
We got a what?
I mean, Radical Grace Radio needs like a miracle something or other.
Okay, do you remember, like, it was 10 years ago at least, when we got a hold of one of these, and it was made of paper, but it was like a paper printed prayer rug. Remember
Yeah,
the
it was in the mail. Someone
it
sent it
came
in the
in the
mail.
mail, exactly.
Right.
And and I don't remember if you had to make a donation to get it, or if they wanted you, they sent it to you hoping you'd send a donation back.
That's what it
But,
was. Yeah.
but and you're supposed to you position your prayer rug the way they tell you to, and then you
Put it
kneel
on the
on it,
floor.
and and
Right.
and this, and they even gave you the prayer that you're supposed to say, as I recall. And so that was their marketing gimmick. Okay, now that's what we could get into, rather than get sued because
Actually,
somebody.
I'm glad that you reminded me because I always wanted to like have an actual prayer rug. And the fact of the matter is we could do that. You can get things like towels and whatnot with logos printed on them. So
Yeah,
with the,
and remember how I remember the thing that I shot down? Oh, that idea that you do all these different religious things or religious sounding things
right,
for in order to make a buck off of Jesus' name, right? And I'm thinking to myself, all these people who are marketers and hucksters,
right,
and they're all going to have to explain someday in front of Jesus. Yeah, well, we kind of put your name on it because sales went up. It's just like, what? That's not the way. That's not the right way to look at these things, guys. How many times do I have to tell you? What he gave us was absolutely for free, and now you want to turn around and make it profitable. That's
right.
just terrific.
Now I'm not skipping the number 3 story, but the number 4 story kind of flows into that
Okay.
because I mean, what we used to say, I don't know what we didn't say this on the air, although I might have said it once or twice, but it says here that they closed Lifeway closed 172 physical bookstores in
Yes.
2019. However, we used to call them Jesus junk stores
Oh yeah.
because the book
Well,
section was that little section in the back of the place, and then all the rest of it was where all the knickknacks were and the posters and the T-shirts and all the
coffee
Christian
mugs
stuff.
and yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, again, you take a coffee mug and you put a cross on it, and now it's a Jesus. Now it's a Christian coffee mug, and you take a Hallmark verse, make it a little sounding Christian, put it on a plaque, and
uh-huh.
now it's Christian wall decor. I
Right.
mean, there's a lot of way, and these stores were filled well, they were literally filled up with these kind of knickknack things, much more so than any kind of books. And the books were the theological equivalent of the knickknacks because they didn't have any real theology in their. I mean, maybe one shelf, maybe,
They
maybe.
sold Bibles with commentaries, and they sold like commentaries by themselves. And then they, of course,
Not
they
too
had a whole
many,
selection of Joel Osteen stuff,
naturally,
and of course, they had Rick Warren stuff in there,
and the
and
Christian fiction stuff.
yeah,
But
and of
you're right. You're only talking about maybe 2 or 3 book stands of
mhm,
shelves, and
yeah.
that's it.
Oh, they had a music section too.
Of
You could buy
course.
CDs. Yeah.
Okay.
Does anyone out there remember what a CD is?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, but we used to call them Jesus junk stores. So I don't think that you could buy MMS at one of those stores. I don't think you could. I hope that wasn't a thing. But okay, so all laughing aside, what about that number 3 story though?
Well, okay. First of all, you're going to have to remind. Oh,
Well, that's the
the number
one
3 story.
where only
The number 3 story. That
14%
was
of
the story about
yeah.
how it's really true though. A lot of people were observing, even close to the time it was going on, that this is having a terrible effect on these kids. They're not getting out to be able to have any time with their friends. They're not getting any socializing, and they're not really learning because this online thing is not effective in a lot of cases. And so it makes a big deal if a whole, like, if you think about a whole group of students are
In
a
a
year
generation.
behind.
Yeah.
they're basically a year behind, because then you figure, well, the next year they can kind of catch up a little bit. They didn't really catch up. I mean, they made some progress getting back what they missed, but I would say on the whole, everybody who was in school, it doesn't really matter. That's the thing; it doesn't really matter where you were in school. If you were almost a senior getting ready to graduate, or you were in first grade, all and everything in between. It's like you lost about 2 good years of education,
Mhm.
and you can never get that back ever. And they can never make it up.
And that's across multiple grades. Like I just
That's what I'm
dawned
saying.
on me that I was thinking about the year 13 as though that's special, but it was all grades. I mean,
All the
they're just
grades.
talking about 13. I mean, there's not really an assessment that's going on
Well,
across all years.
this particular research that Lifeway did said,
Mhm.
okay, look, among 13-year-olds, for just one group, one demographic, look how much their reading ability has declined from previous groups that you
Right,
compare them to. Not amongst themselves. I mean, it's not saying that, all the people who were 13, now they got to the end of the year and they could read more poorly than they could read before. What I just means that they didn't make the progress that the other people who
right,
never had a pandemic, and that was nobody in 2020, but at least in principle, I didn't have a pandemic when I was 13, so presumably I and many other people just sort of marched through the grades,
right.
making basically the progress we were expected to make. There's some outliers either way, but yeah, this is something that what this means is that you're going to see this effect in the American workforce for two
Right.
decades at least,
Or
you
longer.
know, or
I
possibly
mean,
longer.
I mean, I mean, I'm probably being pedestrian because there's probably something I'm just not thinking about. But 18 years, because from grade 1 all the way up to
Oh yeah,
graduation, they're all behind. I
they
mean,
are all behind.
a lot of them are, and formative years, that makes it worse going forward. Potentially, when you're 13, you could catch up in time, but even then, um, because I don't know what it's like to be that far behind. Personally, I mean, you don't either. It's hard
Yeah.
to imagine what it would be like,
So the listener understands what we're saying. So you miss most of a year of because schools are closed
or
and
more,
people are trying to
depending on
figure out
where
what to
you
do.
were.
And then you kind of miss a lot of the next year because they're trying to get things back spun up. But there were issues still being worked through all of 2021. Okay. Now the thing is that doesn't just affect those 2 years, but as you're pointing out, all the years going forward, because you're hitting your sophomore year of high
Right.
school and you're kind of stuck in eighth grade education
Yeah.
and you're not
And the
catching up,
curriculum's much farther ahead than that.
and you're set up to fail because you're not able to function at a 10th grade level. If you've really kind of got everybody got held back at 8th grade, but they didn't get remedial teaching, they
Right.
just got put back in, and it's sort of sink or swim.
Right.
That's exactly what it was.
And that's the word. I mean, it's bad across the culture. It's bad for Christianity because, the book is the kind of what we're about. And I don't
Well, the
know, it
book.
was disheartening when I saw this. It actually took a while to like read through it because I didn't know. I mean, you know that it's bad, but you don't know. There are things that's you hear talked about, and then you come really face to face with it. Like it's not that I met someone that's behind, but I can imagine what someone would be like. And I don't know. I don't know what we're going to do. But I can ask this question: what are we going to do on the other side of the break?
Well, I'm going to talk about something that I've been thinking of here recently. I have just started at Trinity. We can call it an adult instruction class, or adult membership class. It goes by different names in different churches, but we like to have people who want to make a commitment to the church at least understand what we're really about, right? We're not trying to hold back any information. Now, we're also not trying to make everybody memorize everything. That's not the point either. But they should be able to have a class where they can get their questions answered. That's a big thing. And that's something I emphasized last night. But I do have some things that I'm going to be going through with the class, because some of them come from one church background and some of them come from a very different church background. And I want to give them the opportunity to understand what makes Lutherans and their theology. I may even use this term in class at some point, but we talk about a theology of the cross rather than a theology of glory. If I can, that may be a little bit more than I want to delve into, but it's not a bad handle for getting them to think about, or what you said, the division between law and gospel. I really want them to be able to see that Lutherans are not just emphasizing God's grace, but we're looking at it really in a different way. And it's a way that makes a good, positive difference. And so I thought we'd talk about some of that ground I intend to cover on this back half.
Okay, so stick with us and we'll be back with more Radical Grace Radio in just a moment.